Well, good morning. Welcome back. My name's Ken LaSalle, and I'm sitting here with my novel. No, my name's Ken LaSalle, and I'm sitting here with my third memoir, The Day We Said Goodbye, a meditation on acceptance. And I'm going to read to you today. I'm going to read you chapter 9. Pardon me, my nose itched, which takes place during my wedding. The name of the chapter is called Wedding Guests. It occurs on September 24th, 2005. Before I begin, a little disclaimer that I mentioned in the last video. Schizophrenia is not fun or funny or anything like that. And the reason I speak to you about it today was because I felt compelled enough to write it in this book. If it was up to me, I wouldn't say a word. Stupid writer. So, I didn't really want to wake up the following morning, given how little I had slept the night before, but something important was happening that day. What was it again? Oh yes, I was getting married. And as soon as I remembered that, I really began to panic. Tim didn't give me much of a choice, though. He had me up and off the sofa lickety-split. I had to hit the shower and get dressed. We had places to go. Before I knew it, Sean picked me up from the motel and took us to what he called South County, but was actually only Newport Beach. Sean tends to look at anything outside of a few miles in any direction of his home as an excursion. This is not to say he's a homebody. He's just elderly before his time. Not too much before his time. I had to give Sean directions to our destination, the salon where Vicky had made my appointment for my wedding day haircut. And I was the last person they should have trusted to give directions. My mind was locked into an unavoidable certainty of doom that I foresaw as my impending marriage. Nothing would turn out right. We were doomed, and I was the one dooming us. I'd screw things up. I'd hurt Vicky. Somehow, I had to put a stop to it before the inevitable happened. Turn left, I said. Are you sure? Sean asked. I think that's taking us the wrong way. I looked around. You're right. Turn right. How about you just give me the address, Sean said. I didn't exactly have the address. I'd been to the salon once before with Vicky because going to salons is exactly what every man loves to do, and was guiding us based strictly on that foggy memory and my promise to Vicky, why would I need the address? I've been there with you before. I don't know if you can hear that dog barking out there. It's a little annoying. Fortunately, we found the place with time to spare. This long office building, a couple of stories tall, housed dress shops and restaurants and offices. Are you sure this is the right place? Sean asked. Tim watched me silently from the back seat. Yes, I'm sure, I said, getting out of Sean's car. Outside, I scanned the building for the entrance, trying to remember how Vicky had let us in. I had to throw attention off of myself before my two guys caught on to just how full of shit I was. Do you have everything ready for tonight? I asked Tim. Tim nodded. Of course, Ken. You don't have to worry about me. That's good. But it seems strange, he added, that I don't have to write any kind of speech or anything. I always thought that's what the best man did. Sean and I exchanged looks. That is what the best man does, I said to Tim. That's what you do. Are you saying you don't have a speech? Tim gave me a long look that told me he wasn't even close. One of the reasons I had decided on Tim as my best man was because of his background in writing and acting. If anyone could write and deliver a great speech, it was Tim. Or so I thought. I looked at Sean. I'll help him while you're getting your hair cut, Sean said, taking control. Well, if nothing else, this distracted them while I looked for the correct door. I entered through the wrong door, as it turned out, and made my way up to Terry Lynn's salon. Terry Lynn had been Vicky's hairstylist for years, and they were both good friends. These hairstyles, were her wedding present to us. So what do you think you'll do? Terry Lynn asked after greeting me with a big, awkward embrace. Awkward for me, as I was still trying to think of a way out of the wedding. But there was one thing I had resigned myself to, which helped me understand Terry Lynn's question right away. In all the years I'd been with Rosa, I had always insisted on wearing my hair long, or at the very least, long-ish. I had never so much as budged to look the way she wanted me to look. Now with Vicky, I knew she liked my hair short, so my answer to Terry Lynn was an immediate, take it off. Take it all off. About an hour later, I looked into a mirror at a face hardly my own. My hair was short all around and spiked in front. Foreign, stylish, kind of cool. That's how I was going to my wedding. Now, this might sound confusing. After all, I was doing everything I could to make Vicky's day as special as I could, while also hoping in a great panic that it could somehow be stopped. But just think how all that fit in my head. I left the building to find Tim and Sean in the parking lot. Tim standing with a handful of notes and Sean dictating. "Are you sure you're going to be ready?" I asked. "He'll be ready," Sean assured me. Tim fumbled through the notes, looking almost as nervous as me, and tried to parrot, "I'll be ready." Sean couldn't believe what I'd done to my hair. Tim thought it looked great. In matters of style, I always defer to Tim. I explained this to Sean with a quick, "Look at you." From there, we were on our way to breakfast. I tried calling Vicky, but she was busy. I wanted to let her know about the haircut. I wanted to see how she was doing, if she was nervous. But her attempts to get me off the phone just irritated me. And before I knew it, we were shouting at each other. And wasn't it a perfect day for that? Sean and Tim convinced me to hang up and forget about it, dragging me into Denny's. Because breakfast is the most important meal of the day, so why not ruin it at Denny's? Back at Tim's motel room once again, Tim, Sean, and I readied ourselves for the wedding. Tim had set my tux aside, and it looked great, all black and silver. Too bad I had to get in and ruin it. Once dressed, I remind myself that I couldn't smoke no matter how nervous I was. Jeff arrived with Gail, our officiate, in tow, and we waited. Noon turned into 1 p.m. and proceeded to be very rude about taking its time before it turned into 2 p.m. And I paced around thinking about what a horrible thing I was doing to Vicky, making her marry me. I paced so much, in fact, that I started making everyone else nervous. Before long, we were all pacing around outside in our fine clothes, but I was the only one who knew why. And then 2 p.m. turned into 3 p.m. "Let's get going," I said. "Are you sure?" Jeff asked. "I don't think we're supposed to be there until 5:30, Gail told me. "I don't care," I said. "Let's just go." So, we loaded ourselves up. Axel had rented a minivan for towing all of the gifts away after the wedding, and I got in next to Gail. Tim and Jeff rode with us, and Sean went home to pick up Megan. The drive to the hacienda took only about 10 minutes, and I exited the van before Axel could even speak. I raced nervously up to the hacienda entrance, determined to get things over with or stop them somehow, when the man at the door informed me that I could not enter. "Oh no, you don't understand. I'm the groom," I explained. I'm getting married today." He shook his head. "They're not ready. You can't go in." "I'll just sit at the bar. You won't even know I'm there," I said. This time he put his hand out to block my entry. "You can't go inside." There I was, in my tux, with my short hair, about to explode. Jeff came up to me. "Why don't we just drive around for a while?" he suggested. We only drove around for a few minutes before we were back in the motel's parking lot, and by this time I was frantic. However had I managed things. I think there's a typo in there. However had I had managed things. There's a terrible typo in this book, and I don't know what this sentence is supposed to say, and that makes me very sad because it's been here for a while. But however I had managed things, it would only become much worse now that I had been forbidden entrance to my own wedding. "You gotta relax," Jeff said. "Why don't you have a cigarette?" Gail suggested. "A cigarette? I can't have a cigarette," I practically exploded. "I can't smoke because then I'll smell like smoke and I'll ruin our kiss, and that'll start things out great, won't it?" By this time, Jeff and Gail and Tim and Axel were all offering me their smokes. "Listen," Gail said, "you'll have a smoke or two, and then I'll give you some mints and we'll spray you with cologne. No one will know." That sounded very logical. So I smoked. Maybe it helped me relax. I'm not sure. I was too busy ranting to the others about my near certitude that I would ruin any marriage I was a part of. "I saw Rosa last night." Rosa. We sat here and talked. Well, I talked. What the hell am I doing anyway? What gives me the right to ruin a second marriage? Why am I putting Vicky through all of this? She deserves better than me. Doesn't she see that? Can't you all see that? Gail put her arm around me and held me close. "It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. It's good that you're a little nervous. There'd really be something wrong if you weren't." "I'm not going to be fine. Why doesn't anyone see that?" "I've seen a few weddings, Ken," Jeff said. "Some pre-wedding jitters are normal for anyone." "Jitters?" I asked, practically shaking myself between the nerves and the nicotine. "You think these are jitters?" By now, the hour had come closer to 5 p.m., and Gail suggested we try going to the hacienda again. Everyone loaded up in the van as I finished my second cigarette, and Tim stood outside with me. "Why do you think you're seeing Rosa?" he asked. We arrived at the hacienda just after 5 p.m. This time, they let me in. I was shuffled back into the groom's room, a small room plainly decorated with a wide, sturdy table in the middle, where I paced and paced. When Sean arrived, he asked, "What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" I replied. "What's wrong is that I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be putting Vicky through this." "You'll be fine," he assured me. "Oh yeah?" I asked. "Do you remember how my first marriage ended?" For those readers who don't know, my first marriage ended when I kissed a woman who was not my wife. Rosa had been telling me to go find someone else for months. Rejected and despairing, I found someone who cared for me in a way my wife did not. And we kissed. For years, I saw that kiss as an act of betrayal. On September 24th, 2005, I still saw it that way. I wasn't afraid of being rejected. I was afraid of betraying the woman who rejected me. So how's that for fucked up? I don't really like the way that sentence is worded, just so you know. Now, I know I was out of control. I knew it then too. I kept trying to cover it with jokes because, heck, that's what I do. And I had to love my guys even more because they stepped right up and made jokes along with me. We passed the time before the ceremony riffing from one joke to another. Whenever there was a break, I'd pick up my phone and try to call Vicky, getting her voicemail every time. "You're not supposed to see the bride before the wedding," Jeff reminded me. I held up my phone. "This is a phone. I wouldn't see her." Eventually, I got her on the line just long enough to tell her I loved her. After our fight on the phone earlier, it was so important for me to put things right. And after my declaration of love, Vicky said, "Can't talk now, busy." And she hung up. Little did I know she was just entering the hacienda. She'd had a lovely day with her girls, far from the panicked pacing of mine. She had no idea I was in the middle of a breakdown. She was just getting up to her room to put on her dress as if nothing was wrong. Ha! Somewhere in there, somebody brought us a bottle of champagne. And I dove on top of that thing faster than a Tim. Tim was nearly there too, so ready for his daily booze. Then the door opened, and Steve walked in. And I let go of the champagne because I didn't want to look like an alcoholic in front of my future father-in-law. Not to fear. Tim got it. And then Steve said, "Oh, great, champagne. Why don't you open that up?" So we did. We went through a couple of rounds of toasts. I toasted my men toasted me. We all got a little bit toasted. Gail came in with some things to sign and asked, "What are you going to do about the ring?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well," she said, "is Tim going to hand it to you?" "Well, sure, I guess," I told her. But the wheels were already spinning in my head. They weren't just spinning in my head. I do a disservice in this book by not mentioning how enthusiastic the boys all were. I needed no encouragement, and they gave me plenty. Of course, Jeff could hand it to Tim and Sean could hand it to Jeff. "You could do a whole thing where you lose the ring," Gail suggested excitedly. Big mistake. Suddenly, we were all alive with comic possibilities. As a comedy writer, I took the lead, directing each of my men to what they should do. When asked for the ring, Tim would look confusedly to Jeff, Jeff would look confusedly to Sean, and then Sean surprised me by looking confusedly to absolutely nobody behind him. "That's great," I said. "I should have the ring down in the audience," Steve told us. I pointed to Steve. "He's right. Give him the ring." So it was decided, and Steve gave a big smile. And that's the whole reason I did it. Just to get their approval, I guess. And I felt close to him in a way I never did with my own dad. My own dad would never have been in that position because my own dad would have taken over as ringleader. I wouldn't have been able to direct him. He would have wanted to direct me. And that's how it is with each member of my family. We don't want to follow anyone. We want to lead. And I realized that. And I realized that in letting me lead, Steve gave me a terrific gift. Oh, there were going to be many times when I'd look to him for direction, make no doubt about that. Then, all of a sudden, Nicole came in the room. Nicole was the girl who worked for the hacienda who was running this show. And when I saw her, I immediately thought about how much I wanted to have sex with her. Did I mention I was nervous? Well, I was about to get much worse. We're ready to start, she said. It's time. Time? I asked. What do you mean it's time? Gail took my hand. You just stand behind me and walk when I walk, she directed. Steve left the room, and Tim, Jeff, and Sean got in line behind me. What's going on? I asked. Like that. I was pretty nervous. Nicole left the room. Gail followed her. And I was nudged from behind. Well, pushed, actually. I took a step and realized that Rosa was standing next to me. If I were to write this book today, there would be a lot less of Rosa in it. Oh, come on, I thought. Could your timing be any worse? Rosa smiled up at me and locked her arm through mine. I knew she wasn't there. I knew that no one else could see her. But I could see her. I walked up to the gazebo, which stood in the hacienda's courtroom and would be where the wedding would take place. And Rosa walked right beside me the entire way, smiling, that same smile she had worn on our wedding day. Now, when you were you to watch a video of my wedding, you would see none of this. I am always surprised at how I got through the wedding with such aplomb, being able to function with everyone else while also having the worst kind of panic attack at the hallucination of my first wife standing beside me, which really came as a surprise, because while it was going on, I was sure everyone could see me freaking out, if not necessarily Rosa. I wanted to say something. I wanted to turn to Tim. I wanted to look at the guests and say, do you see this? Do you see her here? Now do you understand why Vicky shouldn't be marrying me? But I kept walking. I stood next to Gail and tried to will her to see Rosa there. But I knew well enough that I was the only one seeing her there, and I knew that Rosa wasn't going anywhere. My guys lined up behind me, and the music began to play. I looked down the aisle, suddenly in a panic. Vicky would be coming down that aisle in any moment, and Rosa was standing beside me. What if Vicky came down and stood next to Rosa? First down the aisle was Billy, one of Vicky's oldest friends. Billy had been the one to give me the 3rd degree on the same day I had planned, unbeknownst to her, to propose to Vicky. Billy's cross-examination had been so odd, with questions like, what did you want to be when you grew up when you were 5? That I hadn't been entirely sure if it was a cross-examination, but somehow it was, and I passed. She should have asked, what happened to your first marriage? But she didn't. Then Paula walked down the aisle. Paula and her husband Don would end up enjoying our wedding quite a bit. they would end up enjoying the bride's room, which had a lock on the door and lots of privacy. They would run into us halfway through the reception with post-coital smiles, horrible at hiding that kind of thing. But Vicky and I weren't offended. Hell, we applauded them. My eyes shifted away from Rosa because I did not want to get caught staring at something that wasn't there. I questioned myself about how well I'd moved on from my ex-wife. Yes, I was sure that I had moved on. Rosa looked beautiful in her wedding dress, but I wasn't running around trying to find her again. She had come to me, not the other way around. Now Trish was walking down the aisle. The first time I had met Trish was at the same time I met a large group of Vicky's friends, and it had been so important to me that I leave a good impression. She later told me that I needn't have worried. Once Vicky had chosen, they knew I was good enough. I looked down at Rosa. Okay, fine, I thought. You want to be here? You hang on just as long as you want, but I am marrying Vicky, and we will be happy together, and I will love her, and you are not going to stop that. I looked up at the end of the aisle and to the doorway where Vicky would step out in her wedding dress. The music played, and I watched the sunlight pouring through those doors. But no Vicky. The music kept playing, and we kept waiting. No Vicky. Here's something you might not know about my wife. She's a klutz, a world-class klutz. If being a klutz was an Olympic sport, Vicky might not get the gold, but she'd take a place on the podium. I can tell you that. I've seen Vicky fall down in the middle of a room just by tripping over her own feet. And this was a woman who was descending a narrow staircase in a long dress all by herself. What if she fell down? I tried not to think about it, but all the same, what if she fell down? We probably would have heard it. But then another thought came to me. What if Vicky is having second thoughts? What if she had come to the same conclusion as me, that I was far too damaged to make a good husband? What if she had realized that and taken off, leaving this mess for her bridesmaids or her parents, or worse yet, me to sort out? I didn't want that. I never wanted that. At that moment, I knew something that until that point had remained elusive. You see, after I met Vicky, I never felt I loved her as much as I should. I remembered the days of passion with Rosa, that crazy hot passion that makes you ready and willing to do anything. I didn't have that same passion for Vicky. Vicky was my best friend, and I knew I loved her. She was incredibly giving, fall down funny, smart as a whip, sexy as hell, everything you'd want in a girl. But I always felt like I was cheating her because I didn't love her enough. My realization did not tell me that I loved her enough, but it did tell me that I would. Please come out here, I thought, and I will never stop loving you. I looked at Rosa. I'm going in there in a minute if she doesn't come out, I thought. And you're not coming with me. When I looked back up, the door opened. I saw Steve step out. Time just seemed to stop. I saw Vicky, and I was momentarily blinded. Sunlight poured through the doorway, adorning my bride in a luminescence that turned her into an angel in my sight. The world exploded. The universe fell away. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. See that? I thought to Rosa. I don't know why she loves me, but I lucked out but Rosa was gone. It was as if she'd never been there. And of course she hadn't. I could tell you about the rest of that evening, the evening of September 24th, 2005. I could tell you about the little speech I gave, or the speeches given by Tim or by Trish. I could tell you about the first dance Vicky and I shared, a dance we had rehearsed over and over and over. We had rehearsed that dance so much that it felt more like a performance in front of all of our families and friends. It was the dance we shared before that one that will always stay in my mind as our first. A dance shared all alone in front of 100 people who didn't even know what we were doing. They were too busy enjoying the hors d'oeuvres. I could tell you about our two families coming together, the fears I had held about my brother and sister meeting my dad for the first time in decades, which I think is why Audrey did not make it. The sly glance my brother-in-law's girlfriend, Lonnie, gave to him, the proficient dancing shared between my brother Dwight and his girlfriend Monica, my dad and Blanche, and on and on. I could tell you all these things. But that's not the way it happened, not for me at least. The way it happened for me was like this. I saw Vicky coming down that aisle and she became my world. And for that entire night, all I could think about was how enormous and tender and gratifying it was to love Vicky. Every time I touched her, I felt love. And I couldn't touch her enough. The world was love. Even when we moved in separate directions, such as when I sat with my brother-in-law Mike and he smoked a cigar and I smoked a cigarette, it was to share this abundant feeling of love. And when Vicky and I moved back together again, it was like returning to the arms of a part of me that I had always longed for, even before we had met. It was right. I don't remember a moment of hesitation, of nerves, of panic. All of that fell away like a veil, and I thought, now this I could get used to. This is what I've needed all along. This is why I was so afraid, why Rosa kept popping into existence before my eyes. And it's what I've always wanted. Mind you, any judgment call about my state of mind might have been a bit premature at that point. The next thing I knew, Vicky and I were being led outside to the open door of a limousine. One of Vicky's friends, Dan, owned a limo and had made us a present of all-day limo service. Vicky had been enjoying the lap of limo luxury all day. This was my first time encountering it. Have a beer, Dan offered from up front. Sure enough, there were little bottles of Corona waiting there, all chilled and wonderful. I popped a bottle, sank back into my chair next to Vicky, and the world was utter perfection for 10 minutes. Our hotel for the night wasn't anything really fancy. Our money was going to the honeymoon. But having a limo pull us up to the front door certainly made it seem so. Time blurred, and the next thing I knew, I was standing behind Vicky in our hotel room. One by one, I was removing bobby pins from Vicky's intricately styled hair. One by one, I counted all the reasons why I loved her. There must have been 100 bobby pins, but I didn't care. Vicky could not have been lovelier. And then, sometime later, the two of us realized that we had never eaten dinner. Our reception had been such a blur for both of us, we had missed dinner. Our host had been kind enough to pack us up some extra meals and extra pieces of cake. Those would be waiting for us at home. We were starving. So we did the only sensible thing. Vicky had been prescient enough to pre-park her car at the hotel, so we went downstairs, got in, and drove to Taco Bell. I should say she went downstairs, got in, and drove to Taco Bell to pick us up some dinner. While she did that, I stood outside, smoked a bit, and reflected on what had just happened to us. It's funny how quickly real life reasserts itself after such a life-changing event. A wedding, a funeral, you name it. Real life crashes back down upon us. And I realized with a start that I was married. Again. What would I do this time? Would I cheat on Vicky? Would I break her heart? Would she break mine? Would she ruin my life the way Rosa had? There was no way to know. And that freaked me the hell out. And that's chapter 9. And that's going to be it for this week, because next week we have to go all the way to the Bahamas for chapter 10, Stranger in the Night, the Bahamas. Until then, be good to yourself, be kind to others. Let's make this world a better place. Pick up a copy of The Day We Said Goodbye, a meditation on acceptance at Amazon, iTunes, Barnes & Noble, Audible, wherever you find ebooks, audiobooks, or paperbacks. I'll see you soon. And that's it. Thanks for coming around, and I hope you subscribe, click the like button, and connect with me on all that social media business on the screen.